Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your natal moon in conjunction with Saturn. And this can be a very cold placement. The moon can be the mother, and so this can also suggest that the mother was very cold to the child when they were coming up, when they were being raised. And this can affect the way that you react emotionally in life, because we do tend to take on the behavioral patterns of influential adults around us, like parents, right? I would like to say that I believe that the sign that the moon is in is incredibly important, because if your moon is in a water sign, for instance, I think you're going to be more compassionate, even if you have that kind of impulse to pull back. I think it'll be very hard to do so completely. And how this may manifest for you is that you feel that melancholy that comes with not having been nurtured yourself in the way that you want it to be. With the fire element, which I also see as emotional, but in a more impersonal way, I think that this can just make the person more buoyant, and therefore they're not going to necessarily have a tendency towards depression, uh, the way that this combination can sometimes manifest in such a way. This combination, what's happening here is that Saturn is dampening the emotions. Saturn is very restrictive, and it's authoritarian. It's the ruler of Capricorn. So there's this sense of rules, and the emotions are not bound by rules. They're not supposed to be. So it can feel very constraining emotionally to have this combination. Remember that the conjunction is really an intensifying of the contact between two planets. They will typically be in the same sign, but not always. It's really about the degree span. That's the most important thing. So if you have a late degree in one planet in one sign, and then an early degree the other, they can still form a conjunction, and they can be their own entity, because it's whatever the two planets joining what they represent. So I want to give a shout out to horoscopejoy.com, where I've been perusing their info so I can kind of put in my own words. It was weird, because when I was looking this up, I didn't find it very readily, and it seems like I didn't even know that I hadn't done this yet, because this is a big one. And yeah, so I think that this can be somebody who tends to carry a lot of guilt that they can't figure out where it's coming from. I wonder sometimes if they are actually tuning in psychically to the mother, and especially if the mother was not really enthused about the pregnancy and they kind of like internalize that. I don't know, that might be going way too deep into that, but I do think sometimes that we are psychically linked to our mother, even if you're adopted, that you might be linked to that, and that you can kind of carry some of her inner turmoil, you know. But so the mother may be cold, and therefore you may have this need, because the moon can be like this emotional need to have that sense of appreciation from others. And I'll say this, if your moon is in Libra or in Pisces, these are two signs but that I think of that are really people-pleasing signs, that this can be taken to excess. And you really have to, get a handle on that, because you might be one of those people when somebody feels like they need somebody else to appreciate them or to love them. Oh, yeah, no, actually, also Cancer. I don't know about Scorpio. Scorpio is an alternate universe, Moon in Scorpio. That's like a whole different animal. But yeah, some of these signs, the person may feel like emotionally off kilter, I suspect, if they can't get that approval, that sense of appreciation. There's something that probably happened that caused you to have to grow up too soon on the emotional level. So you have to look at other aspects of the chart, so to figure this one out, because if and actually that's not even true, because sometimes there's trauma that is not spelled out in the chart. But especially if you have certain indicators of that, look at your 8th house, look at your 12th house, look at if you have placements in, inner planets in Scorpio, or contacts to Pluto, especially hard contacts. That can also give a hint as to things that were not right, and that created you feeling like you grew up too fast emotionally. And that often happens with Saturn, that it places this kind of oppressive circumstance that makes a person have to kind of deal with things that are beyond their scope at an early age. And this can cause trust issues. Being rejected can be like phobic for you, because that can be one of your worst fears, because it stems from that deep feeling maybe of rejection from the mother. And I'm saying the mother because the moon is connected to the mother. It might manifest in a different way. It's funny because Saturn is the father, so you never know. Maybe it's both of them. um, but the other thing that can happen is, and it's funny because when I look at these different videos that I'm doing of these aspects, and I think about myself, I think I have the opposition. And they're all going to be, because of the nature of Saturn, I think even, they're all going to be challenging, even the conjunction. Conjunctions can be overly, overtly positive, but sometimes they're more on the challenging side, because depending on what two planets are coming in contact with each other. So, they mention here, I'm just going to read this verbatim. Many of them decide to adopt a very cold exterior and make others believe that they're not capable of being nurturing and loving. This is happening because they're terrified of expressing how much they need these basic emotions into their life. And this will be true when I do the square and the opposition. This is going to be very similar to that, because I can recognize myself in that too. And the thing is that also looking at the sign of the conjunction, if it's in the same sign, that it's very important that the person acknowledges that they have feelings, because you can really, disconnect from your feelings, especially if you're like an air sign. I mentioned Libra in terms of people pleasing, but just in general, the earth signs can be very abstract when it comes to feelings. And if even I notice when people are utilizing astrology that they really go deep into it and they become very analytical about it. And I feel like that is psychological bypassing too, as well as people who go into therapy and they're really very analytical about everything that's happening to them. To me, that's like an intellectual protective defense mechanism. You know, they're not really feeling their feelings. They're identifying their feelings, and it's not the same thing. And so anyway, especially with some signs that are more emotionally vulnerable. So again, I would say Cancer and Pisces in particular. You have to really like challenge any belief that you were not loved, even if you could prove it in some way. The ultimate thing is that we do not need other people's approval, and love is a form of approval. And the other aspect of this is that sometimes other people do not have the ability to show that they love somebody in a very, I don't know if I'd say healthy way, but a very obvious way. So they might have a tendency to kind of be indirect or what have you, but they still do love that person. Love is a very loaded issue as far as I'm concerned, because we don't really know, how to quantify it. And it can be used as a way to kind of blame everything that happens on your life on not being loved. That can become one of these things that is used as an excuse. The spiritual path is about self-empowerment as far as I'm concerned, and this also includes our emotional nature. When, sometimes when people feel unloved, they have an incapacity to love others. And yet, there are people who are severely abused and they're very loving people. So you can't say that that is, a done deal, that if you are not loved, then they have damaged your ability to love. Also, what about the parent who cannot love? Maybe they were not loved. So it's a chicken and egg syndrome, which came first. And, who is the ultimate person that we can point fingers at? The bottom line is that I believe that our job is to find a way to fill our own cup emotionally. And so when I do these kinds of things, I always feel like I want to offer a solution and not just describe the problem, because, yeah, this can be kind of challenging. And so this is a very serious placement when you have contact with Saturn. You may take yourself too seriously emotionally. Do you have the ability to laugh at life? Oscar Wilde said, "Life is too important to take seriously." That sounds like a contradiction, but it's really quite wise, because when you live in joy, nothing can really weigh you down. But if you come from a pessimistic viewpoint, you see the lack in everything, and Saturn to me can be that pessimism and that lack. But Saturn is also disciplined, and this can be very good for keeping your emotions disciplined and not too wild. So if you have the moon in Aries, maybe this will make you less likely to fly off the handle. So maybe there's a good side of this after all. Um, this can make you attracted to older people if you have this conjunction. I suspect all of these contacts with Saturn is the same thing. Certainly with me, that was the case. But there's other reasons for me why that was the case. And I have the opposition. Because Saturn represents old age, and the moon, it's like you resonate emotionally with people who are more mature. But remember that people who are chronologically older may not be wiser necessarily, and they certainly may not be more positive. So you may be, if you already have an issue with kind of getting melancholy sometimes, that you do not want to necessarily associate with people who are going to enhance that. You want to be around positive people. So that is an example of the need to surround ourselves with people who are uplifting, who are not overly pessimistic. And I'm not talking about people who are spiritually bypassing and say good vibes only and act like, oh, you shouldn't ever have any negative feelings. But the people who are pretty, consistently negative, you want to kind of get away from that. You should definitely embrace your happy emotions. Don't feel guilty if you're in joy. And they talk about this. I really think this is coming from the influence of the mother. I really do. I think that somehow the mother instilled this idea of, too much levity in life is frivolous or something like that. You have to look at the sign of the moon to see what the mother's temperament or attitude might have been like. The website mentions that this can be helpful in career matters because of the emotional detachment, and that it creates people who are very, I would say, dutiful. They mention being responsible and practical. When I say responsible, I say dutiful because people who feel a sense of duty are likely to do what they say they're going to do. They're not going to flake out and things like that on others. But they mentioned, I'll just say this verbatim, they said, however, they should make a goal of overcoming their shyness and low self-esteem. I don't necessarily agree that this is going to be somebody who is shy. I think it's going to be somebody who is emotionally repressed, because Saturn can do that. Well, that's different than being shy. It's like somebody, if you've heard the term wet blanket, they say somebody is a wet blanket who is kind of an emotional dampener. And I think Saturn can do that. But I don't think that necessarily speaks to low self-esteem. Well, it does in the sense if you really need that sense of love and you feel like you're coming from this place of being unloved. Yeah, I guess you could say that. And, in that case, you could make the leap that if the person kind of focuses more on career and tries to get away from their emotional nature, they can excel in the career and use that as a substitute for emotional fulfillment. And I think that's what workaholism a lot of times is all about, is the person is kind of channeling all of their emotions into their work and their goals and meeting their goals, and kind of hiding out from personal relationships because it kind of gives them a way to avoid, and an excuse to avoid intimate relationships. They can just blame it on the work. So, in any case, obviously, they mention about opening up to others so that you don't become isolated. And they mentioned that, if you become parents, that because you're maturing, you see, Saturn gets better as it gets older, like a fine wine. Saturn can even grow younger as it gets older. There's a phenomenon with that, but Saturn is very much about the long haul. And so the person can improve with age, and that means that your emotional nature will improve because you'll be gaining wisdom, you'll be seeing things, and they say that it can, be very good if you're a parent and dealing with children, that it can, really make you bond well with your children, because I'm assuming it's because you understand the dynamics, the emotional dynamics, and you're going to learn from that and change things and maybe be that kind of emotionally available parent that you might not have gotten yourself, or be more emotive towards your children, praise them, tell them that you love them, and things like that. And really, you don't need to have children to do this. Knowledge is power. Just me discussing this, you can catch yourself if you tend to be, go into that cold mode. And also if you go into that feeling of like, nobody loves me, wah, 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 mommy issues and all of that, you can kind of like check yourself. I don't know how many of you have watched or listened to Dr. Joe Dispenza. They have a whole bunch of videos on YouTube about him. I don't know if he's a neuroscientist, but he's definitely somebody who is in that field. But he also is like the quantum quantum mechanic. And he was talking about how you break a habit or something like that, like a mental habit. And I think he actually said something like, you think this thought that, you keep thinking that is very destructive, and you just yell out, stop. I was kind of like half paying attention when I was listening. So I don't know if he said it exactly like that, but I think that is a great idea, because you really become conscious of how much a certain behavioral pattern or thought is negatively impacting you. So being able to just kind of stop yourself in your tracks can rewire your brain, I guess, something like that. So yeah, and your brain and your emotions, all of that is interconnected. So that's that. And okay, I hope that you enjoyed this and resonated with it. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.